Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Spring 2022 BFA Thesis Conversations series. My name is Aspen Mays and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the chair of the photography program here at the California College of the Arts. And before we begin, I want to say it is my great pleasure and privilege to celebrate our students this afternoon and all the inspiring work that they've made during their time here and their extraordinary resilience to be finishing their college degrees during a pandemic. So I've had the pleasure of working with just about all of them, not quite all of them, and it's just so exciting to see how much you've grown and where you've taken your work and your time at CCA. I would also like to begin with a land acknowledgement. The California College of the Arts campuses are located in Huichin and Yelamu, also known as Oakland and San Francisco, respectively, on the unceded territories of the Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who have continuously lived upon this land since time immemorial. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. CCA honors Indigenous peoples past, present, and future here and around the world, and we wish to pay respect to local elders, including those of the lands from which you are joining us today virtually. If you are unsure of whose land you are currently residing upon, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca, and I will put that in the chat for everyone to reference there. So how it's going to work today is that we're going to be celebrating 5 photography seniors: Astrid Hernandez, Leah Leonard, Tiago de Cruz Ellner, Jayna Swami, and Keisha Kidd. Each senior will give a 10-minute presentation introducing their work, and after each presentation, we'll have about a 10-minute conversation with the student, providing feedback and asking them questions. We have a guest respondent today who we'll introduce in just a moment, and my co-host, Marcel Pardo-Arisa, who will also introduce in just a moment, and I will be sort of co-hosting and going back and forth in conversation, but primarily we'll be hearing from our outside respondent. So in light of that, please note that we won't have time during this event for a public Q&A, but we encourage attendees to drop comments and affirmations for the seniors in the Zoom chat. The chat transcript will be saved, and at the end of this event, it will be sent to the seniors as almost like a virtual guest book. And I have to say that's always one of the highlights. We've been doing these for a couple of semesters, and please, put whatever you would like them to know, and especially praise and affirmations in the chat, because it really is a nice thing to have a record of. And at the very end, I'll invite all of us to unmute and give a round of applause for our seniors. I'm looking around the room here, and I just want to also acknowledge that Dean Sunny Smith, the Dean of Fine Arts from CCA, is here. Thank you so much, Dean Smith, for joining us. And I see Nelson Chan there, fellow photo faculty member. Hope I haven't missed anyone. I see some other wonderful students all up in the mix too. So it's so great to have all of you here. And a special thank you also to Ingrid, our program manager, for helping organize today's event. We're almost there. Last but not least, where else? So I want to just acknowledge here also Marcel Pardo-Arisa, who's been teaching, Ariso, who's been teaching, wait, I think I got it wrong. It's Arisa. Pardon me, Marcel. Got that wrong twice in a row, who's been teaching senior projects this semester in the photography program. I would love it if you could introduce yourself, Marcel, and then introduce our wonderful guest respondent, Keisha Lucas.
Totally. Thank you so much, Aspen. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcel. I use they, them pronouns. I'm very excited that we're all sharing space today together, celebrating the work of everyone. I have had the pleasure of working with 4 of the students this semester, and I just feel very honored to be able to kind of like witness their growth and see all the effort that they're putting into their own practice. I also want to introduce the respondent for today, who is Keisha Lucas, a good friend and also like a colleague who I admired. So Keisha Lucas is an artist based in the San Francisco Bay Area. She uses photography to explore ideas of home, heritage, and inheritage. She's interested in how ideas are passed down and seemingly inconsequential moments create changes that last generations. Her work has been exhibited at Oakland Museum of California, Anglin Gilbert Gallery, Headland Center for the Arts, San Francisco Arts Commission Galleries, CIIS Palo Alto Art Center, among many others. Lucas received her BFA from the San Francisco Art Institute and her MFA from Mills College. So we're super excited that Keisha will be able to respond to the students' work. And that being said, I'm excited to introduce the first student, Astrid Hernandez. So whenever you're ready, feel free to share your screen.
All right. Hello, everyone. I will get started. Cool. All right. So my name's Astrid Hernandez. I'm a photography BFA student, and additionally, I'm working on my history of art and visual culture minor. And you'll see that influence heavily in my work for sure. So my name is Astrid Hernandez, and I'm currently located in San Francisco, and I grew up in Los Angeles. I was first drawn to photography celebration of community and its capability to be used as a tool to deepen connections. Most of my work embraces strong femininity and woman empowerment. More so recently, I've been practicing performative art and communal art to further engage with communities. With my photography, I focus on embracing my subjects for what they naturally look like. And I found that that has been very helpful for my subjects, which really motivates me to continue photographing, just because it definitely changes their confidence and it boosts it. And yeah, and then as for my more communal work, it definitely brings more communities together by bringing up subjects that normally people don't talk about, so we feel closer with each other. This is some of my older work, and yeah, the one on the right is Oakland Rain. I took that for one of my media art history classes, and it was a direct influence by Oscar Rylander, who was one of the pioneers for photography. I really liked his theatrical approach when it comes to poses, and I kind of follow that, or I kind of follow those themes with my more current work. And the one on the left is more documentary style photography, which I don't always do, but I have found some more comfort in that too. So I'm hoping to sort of work on that as I progress. One of my most favorite series that I've done at CCA has been my Do You See the Beauty I See in You mirror series, which I did my first semester at CCA, which was just writing these words onto mirrors on the bathrooms. And in this way, it's like, I didn't really take credit for the work, but it was very beneficial for me to further engage with other people and to kind of bring up the issue of like body dysmorphia and how we should all talk a little kinder to ourselves when looking into mirrors. I feel like part of me keeps wanting to bring this back, so maybe in the future I will. And I plan to make a little tribute to this series with my senior installation. Well, okay. Well, this is my current work. And right now I'm working on a medium format series called Divine Sparrow. And this is what I've been working on for my senior exhibition. A lot of this has to do with, again, embracing femininity. And it took me a while to sort of think of what type of subjects I want to present in them. So one of the things that I've been focusing on is photographing people I don't necessarily know too well. I've only photographed, only 2 out of 7 are close friends. And I just want to show that I'm capable of being able to photograph people that I don't know and making them feel comfortable within their body. And that being apparent on photo, and especially since I'm shooting medium format, I only have 12 exposures, so it's a little harder to sort of get that comfort since I'm not starting with digital and I can't snap a bunch of photos, but I really found it very beneficial. I'm photographing everyone on at the same garden, just because I've found this like hidden gem like 2 blocks away from SF campus. And yeah, I think another thing is, I don't know, sorry. Oh yeah. At first I considered doing nude photography, but looking into it, I just felt like that was going to change what I was trying to say like too much. And even though like these people are in lingerie, I still don't find these photos to be sexual, like how people would think. And I don't know, I'm really happy about that. And that's sort of where I'm going. And I've decided I'm going to photograph just males as well. Just because it took me a while to understand that males also have some feminine sides to themselves, even if they're like non-queer identifying. And yeah, and all of these have been shot within the last month. In the next slide, it's also part of the same series, although these are new scans, so they're not like entirely completed on editing. But yeah, with my friend on the right, I'm planning on having like the installation of them representing like the moon and then my other friend representing the sun. So it'll sort of transition through the gallery, as I will have about 16 prints. And I will have customized frames that my dad's making me. So please come, because it's going to be very good. I'm putting all of my effort in it. And yeah. Okay, and then I wanted to show some of my current work, or kind of how I'm processing where I'm going. I've been more in touch with my illustrative side, like the drawing on the top left is my first drawing, and sort of a new hobby I've been picking at, and I've been printing onto fabric more so recently. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like my illustrations show more of my own personality, which I never really show, because I'm always showing it through people with my photography. And I don't know, I find it very beneficial. And then I also wanted to show like a work in progress on the right, which is printing cyanotypes onto fabric. This was just like on Friday, so it's very fresh and new. But I think I'm gonna incorporate some of that into my exhibition. Yeah. As for like post-graduation, I'm still not sure what I'm doing. I know I want to go to grad school eventually, but I think that'll be in like 3 to 5 years. But as of right now, I think my goal is just to maybe get a marketing job, and I don't know, I want to be a photographer. So I just have to, I don't know, we'll figure that out in time. But yeah, main goal is to stay in San Francisco though. And here is my flyer for my exhibition that's coming up at the end of the month here in San Francisco. And yeah, here's all my contact information.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Astrid. It's really good to see some of the work that you've been doing for your exhibition. Keisha, feel free to jump in if you have any comments.
Oh yeah, so I've been like taking copious notes, but first off, I just like to say like, wow, you've been working really hard and it's coming across in your work. But did you say you were making 60 or 16 prints for your piece?
16.
Okay, I heard 60 and I was like, oh my goodness, I really hope she said 16. Yeah, I'm really curious about this. Well, first off, your earlier work from 2020 feels so, even the image through the window feels so relevant, like right now, just thinking about how we're, you know, we're sort of away from each other, and that was maybe the only like safe way to photograph someone at the time. So, and then even just like the image of the person on roller skates, just something that has been embraced widely right now, but also like the mask in the image and the mask on the roller skater at the same time. I have a question about the mirror series. How did you engage with the janitorial staff at the school or like, how did that work out? Like you said, it was kind of on the DL that you were doing that.
I didn't. I just did it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get in trouble for it. I still talk about it till this day.
Okay.
It's also CCA, so
Yeah. Of course. And then I'm curious about with your Divine Sparrows body of work. You said you're photographing strangers. Are you and how are you defining femininity, or are you letting your subjects define it for themselves?
I feel like I think it's kind of a combination of both, since it's like sort of a teamwork sort of thing. I always like to make my subjects feel like they are super engaged in it, so I kind of just let them choose their own outfits.
Mhm.
And then as for location, that's where I come in. I feel like the garden kind of brings out some femininity in it, just in the way I like in where I'm shooting them. And yeah, I feel like the poses kind of come out natural as well. I kind of see how they move and sort of stop them just to kind of capture that comfort.
So these images are the subject has a lot of say in sort of like how they are perceived in the image, or how they are represented.
Yes, more so, but I find that most of my subjects are very comfortable and they really trust me. So I mean, shooting medium format, they have to trust me because they have no idea what it's going to look like until I get my film processed. But yeah, but so far everyone's really loved the outcome. And someone I recently photographed, who I don't have images of right now because they're being developed, he wasn't really comfortable with being like just taking his shorts off. So I kind of had to go around in ways to make it seem like he was somewhat naked and stuff. So I just kind of went around just by using like what I had. So I made like tree branches kind of hide like that area, and yeah.
Right on. Yeah, I feel like that's like a special skill to be able to work with subjects and help them to feel comfortable in being photographed, and help them to feel comfortable that they're being represented in a way that feels good to them. Also, yeah, I mean, I'm glad for you that you're photographing in film, so no one can say, well, can I see what you're doing right now? So you get a little bit of time to figure that out before you present it to them. And then those were my main questions. I was really glad to say that you're not planning on going to to hear you say you're not planning on going to grad school right away. I was like, please take a little time for yourself. Yeah. I'm not sure. I feel like
I mean, I can say like other things. Like I feel like I'm very good at talking with people and communicating with them and making them feel comfortable outside of just photography. I feel like that's how my parents, my friends describe me to people, just because I feel like, I don't know, I used to be an introvert, and photography sort of brought that extrovert personality out of me. So now I just love working with people, and I think that's what makes me happy. But I feel like me being an artist and a photographer feels like a superpower a little bit. I feel like I've managed to grasp, or just occasionally I grasp people like at the right moment, and yeah, like the girl on the right, like I met her in line at a concert, and this was our second time meeting, so that's when I photographed her. And I don't know.
Oh, great.
Yeah. It's so nice to have like these, like I was very specific and particular in like picking out who my subjects were going to be with this. And I think it's my first time not just like looking for anyone to photograph. It's just sort of like, I know people want me to photograph them because I don't photograph everyone. And I don't know, I'm glad to be where I am right now, for sure, as an artist.
That's great. That's really wonderful. Yeah, I was gonna ask you how it was that you went about finding your subjects, but I love that you met them through a line at a concert. Because
Mhm.
in my head, I was picturing like a Craigslist ad or something like that. So
No, it's all
yeah.
communal. I feel like they come to me,
Mhm.
because I definitely get asked a lot if I can. I don't know. I'm not doing photography all the time for commission,
Mhm.
just because I've been really trying to focus on the fine art part of or the fine art practice. Yeah,
Wait, do you separate that in your head, photography and fine art?
a little bit, only because photography is so broad right now. It can mean so many things. And I feel like the way I go off about or go on about photography, I'm like being more in depth of it instead of just shooting.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I hear so often people say art and photography, and I'm like, we could say painting and we might mean house painting. So like I just want to like just say that to give you permission to just call it art instead of separating it from your fine art practice. But if you feel like it's a separate thing for you, that's also fine as well.
I guess it
Yeah.
depends. Because I also agree with that.
Yeah, I just think it's important to remember like, oh yeah, this is also an art practice. I feel like I don't know if I should. Yeah, this how do you, I just saw like something in the chat, but I just wanted to ask, how do you deal with that sort of like public-private aspect of this? Because these are like pretty personal images.
Yeah, I've just been shooting. I've been asking my friends like to be like get naked since I started shooting photography, and it's been about 9 years now.
Mhm.
So I personally am comfortable with like I'm just so used to it, so it makes my subjects more comfortable.
Mhm.
But also it's the location of where this is. It's not like a busy street or something. It's really hidden.
Mhm.
But something cool that just happened since I talked to everyone, the manager of this garden has given me access to their private garden because it's
Wow.
actually next to some boathouses. So I just did one shoot at the private garden, and then my last shoot will be there as well. I guess I can continue, but yeah, I invited him to the exhibition as well. Um, but yeah, that was like so nice. And yeah, we kind of went around it at first, but now it's like I can have both. um, yeah, but that definitely adds more like a shock to like this, just because many people walked by and saw all my subjects like this, but most people just like smiled or like giggled or complimented my models. So it's all been nice.
Right on. That's like that. I'm so glad that you had that positive experience there.
Mhm.
They feel so private and personal, but then you look and it's like, oh wow, this is definitely not um, a private space, like even just seeing the like buildings behind and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I feel like there's a nice tension there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um,
Awesome.
yeah.
Thank you so much for presenting that, Astrid. It's really great to see it. And for Keisha, for your thoughtful questions. I'm like round of applauses for Astrid.
Thank you, everyone.
Excellent job.
Yes. So afterwards, we're gonna go with Leah Leonard. Leah, whenever you're ready, feel free to share your screen.
Got it. Hold on 1 second. Where is it? Okay. All right. Hi, guys. My name is Leah, and today I'm going to be talking about my photo and art practice. Okay, so a little bit of background about myself. I was born in France, in a small little village called Meudon, and my grandmother kind of raised me there, and she kind of taught me how to do a lot, photo, cooking, baking. We just spent a lot of time together. And then I moved to Miami when I was about like 12 years old, and then here for college for photo as well. So then I'm gonna be talking about my inspiration. Going back to my grandmother, she is one of my biggest inspiration. She inspired me to do what I love to do. She taught me everything I knew about photo. She stopped doing photo because of financial issues, but definitely we keep like in contact, and I send her all of my work, and she is definitely one of my biggest supporters. So it's very sweet to have that. And yeah, one of my other inspiration that kind of brought me to art school is definitely Francesca Woodman. I'm a little bit tired of seeing her work now, but she was one of the first photographer I found out about. In my freshman year of high school, when I told my art teacher that I wanted to go to art school, she like lended me a book about her, and I just kind of fell in love with her work, and she definitely inspired me to go to art school. I wanted to go to VSD for so long because of her, but ended up here. So she was definitely very inspirational for me. And definitely like self-portraits definitely like was my way of going towards photography. And then another photographer that I recently found out about, I would say like a year ago, is Sepoya. I just really love the way he does self-portraits. It was kind of like new to me. I just love the way he also like portraits within like a mirror, and I have been working with mirrors a lot, so it was just like really nice to see that. And it's hard to like work with mirrors, so I was like really appreciative of his work, and just found it really beautiful and inspiring as well. And then also Joanna Pichoriska. She's a Polish photographer based in London, and she works primarily with black and white photography, and she's mostly interested in domestic space and man-made environment. She actually asked her subjects to make up an environment within domestic items that they like feel comfortable with. So they like build their own set and then like stay in it, and then Joanna photographs them in their like space that they feel comfortable in. And that's something I actually really appreciated, because that's what I kind of do with my own work. I like build my own set and then like kind of feel comfortable within my own like bubble and like my own like studio space, and then like shoot myself after in my space. So it's something I really like thought that our concept kind of like almost matched, and just really appreciated like the way she would shoot them too. So yeah, I actually really liked her. And then so going towards my own work, one of the first, not the first, but one of the few work that I actually really had fun making, I made that into a zine, and it's How to Cut My Melon. And it was a really kind of comedic zine a little bit, and it was just about like sexualization of women. And I just I make my work very comedic sometimes, and just kind of like laugh at myself in a way of like, for example, this other work, Internal Mess, created in 2020, and I printed this on silver gelatin print. I've never really done anything with this work. I'm like trying to figure out how to continue this after I'm done with my show. But it was kind of like within my own space, like my mind, I felt like a very like a mess, and like just everything felt like it was hard to do, like just like cooking or like eating or like washing my clothes or like anything just felt like such like a chore, so hard on myself to do. So I just like kind of took it and like laughed at myself, and I was like, I'm just gonna make it into something. And so that was the result of that work, and that kind of inspired me to do my work that I'm working on my thesis right now, just because my workflow is really in the studio, and just creating my own like environment and my own like space to work with was like very fun to do. So that's why I kind of continue to work within the studio. So for this work that I'm working on for my thesis, it's called Daydream Performance. And I basically created this whole world in the studio where I would only feel comfortable in, and kind of be able to like camouflage myself in, and like be in my own like bubble and my own like space, like I said. And it just also goes back to like me growing up. I would like be daydreaming all the time and just like never really pay attention to the outside world. And then like my family used to always be like, hey, like remind me like, hey, be with us, or like stop, pay more attention with us, or like stop like, you know, trying to be on you with yourself. And I kind of just realized it was more of a protective shield than anything else, just to like could be with my own. And most of these are going to be printed on silk or paper. And also within the installation, I'm gonna have a piece that has like a curtain and inside another image that is gonna be in silk as well. And working with silk is actually very important for me. It's very comforting. My mom and grandmother were very into fashion growing up. And so like silk was like a very, very big part of their closet. So it just feels very comforting and like almost nostalgic. So that's why I use silk for a lot of my projects. And then this one as well. And my show is actually going to be in IPW, April 4th to April 8th, I believe. Yeah. So this is my show cards if you are interested in coming. And it's in the Oakland campus as well. And yeah. And then thank you very much for listening. And this is my contact information. And then I was thinking for after graduation, like when I'm done, I definitely want to work and get money because it's kind of hard to live here without money. It's very expensive. So I'm trying to work for my art practice so I can continue making art, and definitely want to work within like maybe an editorial job or commercial job if I could, but trying to work for my art practice as well. Yeah, and thank you guys for listening to me as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, Leah. That was great. It's been
Yeah.
really an honor to see your work developing and how methodical you are about developing the project. And I feel like you paid so much attention to each step of making the exhibition possible. And I'm really excited to see it in person.
Thank you.
Yeah, Keisha, feel free to jump in whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm just gonna apologize. I don't know what keeps happening, but my camera keeps turning off, which is why it was off before. Is it on now? Can you see me?
Yeah.
It is, we can see you.
Okay, awesome. I kept trying to turn it on and it wasn't going on. So apologies for that earlier. This is really interesting work to look at, and I really love seeing your sort of artistic heritage, like looking at the influences that you had from anywhere from your grandmother to like all of the artists that you were looking at. And I loved hearing about that. When I look, I feel like all of your work, like you did say this, but I feel like all of your work has like a sense of humor that's coming through in such different ways, and it's a bit of a dark humor, and I'm really enjoying that. I'm really curious with the work, this isn't your thesis work that I'm gonna ask about first, but like with the How to Cut My Melon zine, how do you sort of like balance that space between like making work about making work about the sexualization of women, but not contributing to the sexualization of women at the same time? Like how do you find that balance?
What do you mean? Sorry. What do you mean? Like finding the balance between like not participating, but also
Yes,
like
exactly,
talking about
exactly.
it? Yeah.
Exactly.
I just, that's a good question. Yeah. I think that like, I'm just like playing around it and being myself a comedic and being myself a woman and talking about it, I think is not really participating in it. But yeah, I don't really know.
Okay, I asked because I feel like you did a really good job here, but I also feel like there's like this fine line because we're sort of fed all of this imagery, and then it's so hard to not jump in and like sort of elevate that other thing that happens. The internal mess work, I see such a connection between this and like the work that you're working on in your thesis, and just how I don't know like how many people here probably feel like they understand this this feeling of like the weight of all of the stuff that has to go on, especially like when you're sort of dealing with being in school, but also being in school in the middle of a pandemic or whatever folks have to do at this time. And I feel like you're like the images look really great, and also like the sense of humor also comes across here. I don't have as much of a question here. I just wanted to say that I just like really identified with them, so that's why.
Yeah, that definitely inspired me in my like new work that I'm working on right now. That was like right before like my work that I'm working on. So yeah, I appreciate that. Mhm.
Yeah. And then with your thesis work, I'm kind of curious about, like, you're using silk in the images and then you're going to print them onto silk. Can you talk a little bit more about like the finished work? Like, is it going to float or?
Yeah, so I'm printing half on silk and half on paper, but they are trying to like float a little bit like off the wall, so they can have like this flowy effect of the fabric itself. And I'm trying to treat the paper as I'm treating the fabric, so the paper will be installed the same way I'm installing my fabric, to give that illusion of like it's not paper, it's fabric, but it is paper. Paper.
Mhm.
But yeah, it won't be against the wall. It would be like floating off the wall.
Okay, so and the paper is also floating off of the wall?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'm like trying to look and see more.
And I am working on this installation for like my curtain idea. So I believe it's going to be this picture on the left and this picture on the right. There are going to be like curtains, and then when you open them, there's going to be a print like in hidden. Kind of.
Yeah, there's like you said there's going to be a print that's hidden.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be that print on the left.
It really speaks. That's interesting that you chose that for a hidden print, because it's the only one that's actually like where you're more seen, like you can actually see like the identity of the person in the images, rather than sort of being hidden behind the fabric. Sorry, I'm like I'm trying to think of more like when you're thinking about I don't know how to articulate this question. Well, how are you like deciding like the way that you're like the sizes that you're printing the work, and like the scale of the work, and like how does that impact the way that we're seeing the images?
Yeah, for the sizing, I kind of went into the gallery space just to see how big it was, or like the sizing of the walls and all of that, because I feel like if you print too small, if you print too big, it could look wrong with the space itself. So I'm also like looking at the space I'm exhibiting it and making it fit to the space. So they're all going to be at around 25 inches, except the one on the left. But yeah, for this, I definitely wanted like kind of not big, but like also a medium size one.
Does it like when you print them at the scale, does it wow,
I'm so sorry.
when you print them at the scale, does it feel like the size of the body, like comparable to the size of the body?
Yeah, it does. It's not completely like sizing to my body, but it is like kind of made it like a little bit.
That's awesome. Cool. And you said that after graduation, you're planning on doing work to support your art practice.
Yeah, it's the Bay Area is really expensive. So
really,
and yeah, so I'm trying just to find a job that would pay me enough to continue my arts, practice. I definitely do want to work within art, but I'm also trying to support myself and my art. Yeah.
Right on. Well, I think it's I'm really like listening to you talk about the work and like your inspiration and like your proximity to fashion, but also like even thinking about like how these pieces of fabric are like a form of protection, and like it really does come across even here in the postcard piece, like seeing like there's a mirror of the fabric and a mirror. We're used to looking at a mirror and seeing like ourselves, but instead you're just sort of seeing like more of what's in the room, like almost an illusion. they're like self-portraits without being self-portraits at the same time. And then using this fabric that is like something that, I guess silk is not like skin, but it feels very like something that is like so close to skin so often. So yeah, sorry, that wasn't very articulate the way I said that, but I hope it makes sense.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Leah and Keisha, I hope it's okay if I chime in here just for a
Please.
second too. Leah, congratulations. It's so exciting. I haven't actually seen what you've been working on, so it's really a treat to see your thesis work. And I just want to compliment you. It's been so fun to work with you in your time at CCA, and I really appreciated hearing about your grandmother. That was really touching. I didn't know about that. And I think something that I remember thinking about when you were in investigations too with me was you have this really subtle sense of color too. And we haven't really touched on that in this new work. Can you tell us a little bit about this color palette that you're working with? I always felt like you had a real sensitivity to the colors that you work with.
Yeah, so I kind of went with this color mood board when I first started my work, and I was basically red, a light blue, and then kind of like a beige. And I was just like thinking about like color and what it means to me. And for example, red is a very powerful color to me. I feel like very inspired by red. It's just like definitely a color that like boost me up kind of. So I kind of just went with colors that was like very inspiring to me. And then light blue feels very like welcoming to me. So that's also why I went within these colors.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking that, Aspen. I was also really curious about the color palette.
Yeah, because even though it's red, it's still it's a very particular, there's something that kind of they stay in a certain palette. And I thought that color work that you were making, even, I mean, I know this is now years ago in my class, but in with that bathtub and the tile, there was still this sort of like beautiful muted color palette that you seem really drawn to.
I do like more muted color and less like popping color. Yeah, I've noticed that about myself and my work too, that I'm very more muted color and not like very, yeah,
it's noteworthy. It's it's sort of part of the aesthetic that you work with. And it's quite beautiful. I imagine these to be also quite beautiful when we see the prints, where kind of similar to the comment that's in the chat. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but just it's easy to get lost just in the actual material itself, I think. And there's a kind of a fun thing that happens where I'm really absorbed by how the material is what it's doing. And then I sort of see like a little hint of a body part or something like that. That's really nice.
Yeah, I'm very attracted to silk and the way it folds and the way it like creates this texture. It's just really, truly beautiful to me.
The way that it plays with the light as well is quite nice. And you used it really well, that play with the texture and the sort of like folds and wrinkles almost with the light. It works really nicely in the images.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you guys,
beautiful.
and I really appreciate you guys and everything you've done for me in my time at CCA. So thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'm very excited to see it in person as well. Okay, number 3, we have Tiago da Cruz, Ellner. I'm very excited to see your presentation, Tiago.
Cool, thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Okay. Cool. So my name is Tiago, and I'm gonna be receiving my BFA in photography, as well as my minor in history of art and visual culture. And I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, but I'm currently based in Oakland. And yeah, let's get started. So here is one of the first pictures I ever took on this little digital point and shoot that my mom gifted me when I was like 8 years old. And I like recently found this camera, and it had like this archive of all these images that like little Tiago made. And it's for me just like the most precious thing. And you can kind of see my mom in the back right there. And my mom has definitely been like one of my biggest influences throughout my work. And here is like my mom's work, and she sort of was studying photography when I was growing up. And just like seeing the way that her work has evolved and the way that she works and just being like a really creative person has really influenced me and like pushed me to be an artist. And yeah, so I sort of carry a piece of her in everything that I do. And another artist I really appreciate is Mcknight, who works in the darkroom with large format film and just makes these like really stunning and beautiful prints. And for me, it's like, for me, my practice is also very based in the darkroom. So looking at these images are like really stunning for me. And also I really appreciate how Mcknight talks about their work and how they photograph queer bodies and how it's not mostly about body positivity or representation, but more about like what he did, like what his queer desire is and what he sees as beautiful. And for me, that's something that's like really appreciative. And a little bit about my work. I'm going to show these first. These are sort of my photographic jewelry prints. And similar to Mcknight, these sort of are inspired by queer forms and queer figures, but sort of moving away from like the representation of how queer people are actually seen in real life, but more about like what queer feels like to me and what like I think about when I make these prints. And I wanted to share these first because even though they're more newer for me, they sort of like set me free in like not just the sense of them being cameraless, but like set me free in a sense of like finding myself in my identity. And that like almost like pretty much propelled me into like looking at my work that I was making before in a much different way. And it sort of allowed me to see it more freely. And so, yeah, that's where I'll talk about my thesis work, which is titled Hollywoodland. And in my thesis work, it's very much about looking at Hollywood as a place versus like how it is represented in like the media and this entity of like the monumentalization of this like place. And the name Hollywoodland for me is like referencing the classic golden era of filmmaking and thinking of it as a place that's kind of wrapped up in material and fame and celebrity and stardom, but also like the way that I've grown up seeing it and sort of visualizing it through my own vision. And I often use inversions throughout my work as a way to sort of reveal form and sort of look at something like an X-ray would and sort of see it as like a revealing of true form. And I also like to think of the negative as like the final form, because in photography, we often start with the negative, enlarge it, make it a positive, and then work to make that final print. But sometimes I like to think of the negative as the final form and like how it can exist in its own way of revealing its own sort of like language. And so talking about my thesis work, Hollywood is just this like ridiculous place that I've grown to know and love. And I sort of think of it as like a stage for my work, and just existing in this place, it's like so ridiculous and so full of these characters and full of materialism and full of like just this excess of customization. And for me, it's also, for like a photographer, it's like the most perfect place for me to photograph because I can search for the extraordinary and I can sort of make my own vision come to life with a camera. And yeah, so I've been photographing in Hollywood since I was around 16 years old, and the camera really allowed me to understand my city better. And it really let me be myself, because growing up, I sort of just had my camera and myself, and I would just go around and photograph. And it was just like a really good way for me to understand myself and my work. And yeah, I sort of, like I said, think of it as a stage, and I often like come into like intersections with different characters, and it's allowed me to like express myself as well as just share my vision with the world. Yeah, and the whole reference towards Hollywood has been like something that has been really like interesting to me, because I think of Hollywood as like this place where we all assume it to be so fantastical and wonderful, but like when you really go there, it's like dirty and smelly, and it has like all these crazy people running around. And I just think of it as like such a strange place. Like there's no other place like it. And through photography, I'm like able to share my vision. And through my thesis exhibition, like all these concepts will be like revealed, and my work will be sort of displaying my own vision of this place. And yeah, so my work is very much based in the darkroom, and it always will be. And that's sort of where I start. And then I jump off from there and use my images digitally rendered or printed. But I think I'll always have a strong tie to the darkroom. And that's something that I've really appreciated at CCA, is just this gorgeous space that we have. And I'm so sad to see it go, because I've spent so much time there and like worked so hard that it just feels kind of sad to see it like get destroyed. But for the future, I definitely need to find a space or create my own that I can continue working in this way. And looking ahead, I have other bodies of work that are more based on like the fluidity of nature or the fluidity of water and sort of the femininity of that. And like sort of working in that sort of sense will be like my future plans. And also just figuring out how I can have access to a dark room. That's like #1 plan. But I will eventually build my own. But for now, just figuring out a space that I can work in to sort of aid my work in the future. And you can find me on Instagram and my website, which is live now. I made it last night, but it's looking good. So yeah, you can check out my website. And yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you, Aspen, Nelson, Joseph, Marcel, for like supporting me and always trusting my vision. I like really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for sharing your work, Tiago. This is great. I love that you included that photo of you as a young person. That truly is a gem of a photo. And I also really love how you always push this idea of a proper photograph. And, you know, like kind of push the exposure to this degree where it becomes something else. That's really extraordinary.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thank you so much for sharing your work and your influences. I also love the photograph that you showed from your childhood, and I'm just gonna say, like, the fact that it's a still life, a self-portrait, and a party image all in one, and like just very maximalist. But I feel like the aesthetic that is coming across here, even like when you're talking about Hollywood and like what it is versus like how it's represented. And I kind of feel like here with these various images and like what's going on in the still life here, it's like also talks so much about like what you're working on now. First I wanted to look at the lumens prints that you made, the photograms. I'm really curious that so you have images of a jewelry shop, and I'm really curious about like, do the objects that you put onto the paper have are they specific jewelries, or are they ones that you found for the image?
Yes, thank you for asking that, because I got really nervous and like glazed over that. But these are sort of amalgamations of my own jewelry collection and my mother's. When I was a kid, I was like super entranced by like my mom's jewelry, not because it was like the most glamorous thing, but because it was like so obscure and the forms were so strange, and like my little like queer self was holding it, feeling something. So these are sort of like renditions of like that first like glance into my identity. And yeah, they sort of have become more intricate and sort of has evolved over time.
The way that the color and the shapes and stuff are looking, it feels like almost, especially the image on the left, it feels almost like the objects are trying to emerge from the paper, at least looking at it on the screen here. And yeah, I feel like there's something really interesting that's happening with your work, where I just see you photographing in so many different ways, but they all are telling the same story and they all fit together. And I feel like you're using so many different like photographies to create this series that really, like, if you go to the piece that is, it might be the next piece. Yeah, so this speaks so closely to the lumens print, like using the negative image, also the image of jewelry. Were you thinking about that when you made this one?
Yeah, so I had a series called Diamond District where this came from, and I sort of have been photographing in the Diamond District of downtown LA for a while, and then that sort of keyed me into the lumen prints. So they're kind of fed into each other.
Interesting. And then, wait, will you go to the next image?
Yeah.
Maybe the next image where it is. Like this image, it feels like, are the statues or objects on the side of the road? Is that correct?
Yeah, they're statues.
And the way that it's kind of sort of alluding my notes here, like the way that you treated those statues, I'm assuming you blew them out on purpose.
Yeah.
Is very similar to the image with the stairs in the front of the home towards the end, where it's just sort of going into, like, there's so much falling into shadow, and those things just become shapes.
Mm-hmm.
There's there's something really interesting. I'm sorry, I didn't write down as many questions as I did answers here. Yeah, how do you, like, when did you decide, I guess, or how did you decide to work in so many different ways in order to come up with one series and talk about one idea?
I think it like comes from like me as a kid being like so mischievous and so curious. Like I just have been chasing that curiosity ever since I was like young. And I think through photography, I get bored really easily. And I just sort of searching for something that I can do differently as many times as possible. And it's just been fun for me. So I think at the end of the day, it's just fun. And I just want to keep doing it.
And then, so do you feel like, I don't know if I'm reading this right too. Do you feel like the images are all part of one series?
I do. They're all going to be featured in my thesis exhibition. And I feel like they all exist in my brain in like one body, but like they're all very different, but they are all very the same, like in that sense. Yeah.
I like that. I like the breaking away. I feel like I'm like redundant of what someone else said. But I like the way that you are breaking away from that traditional sort of like, this is how we do, to like make sure that all the images sit together. It's an interesting way to work. Okay, let's see.
I'm going to chime in here too. Keisha, is this a good moment?
Yes, please.
Awesome. Tiago, congratulations. It's been such a treat to work with you all these years. And I just want to congratulate you. I think this work is so sophisticated. And I see you arriving at this place where there's like, you've sort of just given yourself permission to work this way, to take all these different ways of working, bring them all together, not make them in a sort of hierarchy in any way, to say like, well, this one's this type of way, or this one's, better, and this is the real work, or anything like that. And I think that's so exciting. And even I really loved what you said in the beginning of the presentation about thinking about the negative image. And I think as that being the point, or that maybe that's the final step. And I think that's the sort of revelation of photography that I got stuck on too. It's like the first thing that you experience when you start shooting with film and getting in the darkroom is that inversion. And I've been enamored with it now for decades because it's such an unusual thing. And it's like the thing we're supposed to skip right over. And I love that you're saying, no, well, let's actually look at this. And I wonder if you think about even just that as a kind of queering, or a way, a queerness, a way of seeing that's just sort of saying like, no, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to actually like explore this territory. I just loved the way that you were talking about it. So that was a tiny question embedded in a lot of praise. But anyway, congratulations. Thank
you so much. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way. And you bringing that up is actually like very fascinating. And yeah, that's awesome. I never thought of it that way.
Yes, I also really love the way that you're creating a language of your own, like a visual language. Like I can really see it coming through with each one of the images. And I know that like when we first met, you were really like, this is the work, and then this one, and then this one. It's really nice that now you're able to connect them together. And I'm wondering if perhaps you can elaborate more on how you're thinking about presenting all of this in your exhibition, right? Because now we've seen the prints. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I have taken on like the mission of using those massive frames that we have donated. And I've been working very diligently in the darkroom to create these like multiples of the same piece, and also piecing images that are large out of smaller pieces and showing those framed, as well as my other images like I'm sharing with you now. Those will be printed alongside on vinyl, stuck to the wall.
Yes, I'm excited to see them as an object.
Do you think of the installations then of the multiples or the pieces apart, like if they're not things that we're seeing right now, as the piece itself, or the individual pieces together as the, sorry, is that making sense?
Yeah, I believe like it's not the final piece. Like I believe like all of my pieces have many different forms and they can take many different forms. And I feel like the transformative aspect of it is like what's most exciting for me, that it can be different in so many different ways and that it never has to be done in one way. And that's something that I've learned from the Lumen prints, is that they have so many different forms. They like exist one way before chemicals, and then when they're wet, they're a different form. And then when they finally dry, they're at another form, and then they will change over time. So it's like, it's the transformation for me that's like really fascinating and fun. That's
really great. I like to hear that. Harvey Milk has a darkroom in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Is there not going to, I'm sorry to ask you this, because is there not going to be a darkroom at CCA anymore?
There will be. I'm jumping in here again. Also, Tiago, I share your complete sorrow. We're leaving the Oakland campus at the end of the semester.
Okay.
And I share your sorrow because I love that particular darkroom. And I feel like I've made some work there that I'm really proud of. So I have a lot of similar connections to it, but just all the students out there that may be in the Zoom, we will have a dark room in San Francisco. We can't fully announce all the details yet, but so long as I'm around, we're going to have a dark room and we're going to prioritize that way of seeing and working.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because like my heart sunk a little bit. I was like, wait, what?
Yes, do not worry. And Tiago, the Harvey Milk Darkroom is amazing. And if you're going to stick around the Bay, of course, we should also just talk about you in working in our next location as well, and all you alums out there. So to be continued, but the Harvey Milk Darkroom is great. And you know, Tessa is also operating a darkroom. CCA alum Tessa. Does anybody know the name of it? I'll Google it while we're in the back room.
There's also one in Hayward, if you're in the East Bay, that's close to BART at Photo Central. And they have a pretty nice darkroom there too. Anyhow, sweet.
Yes, thank you for the darkroom input. Congrats, Tiago. Amazing. So now we're gonna hear from Jayna Swami. Jayna, whenever you're ready, we're excited to hear about your work.
All right, let me share my screen. Can you guys see this? All right, so hi everyone, I'm Jayna. I'm a photo major like everyone else, and I'm really excited to share my work with you guys this afternoon. So a little bit about me. I'm a Bay Area native. I grew up in San Mateo on the peninsula, and art has always been a really big part of my life since I was a kid. Actually, science and art were my two big interests, and I always wanted to be either a scientist or an artist growing up, and I'm being an artist now, so that's really exciting. But specifically with photography, my earliest memory was my mom buying me a disposable camera before going on a field trip in kindergarten. And I remember being so excited to have my own camera and get my photos back a week later. But it was in middle school that the interest in photography really took a hold of me. I remember taking a class in 6th grade using my family's little point and shoot camera, and I was like hooked. And in high school, I took pretty much every photo class I could. But then when it came to college, I actually decided to go to Chicago for fashion merchandising. But I hated all of my classes. So by the end of the first week, I was a photo major. And it felt like a weight had been lifted off of me and I was going down the right path. And after a few changes in school, I'm back here in the Bay and I'm about to finish up my BFA here at CCA. So in terms of influences, I tend to get a lot of my inspiration outside of photography, but these are a few of the influences that I've been looking at for the last year. So the pattern and decoration movement was introduced to me in a textiles class here, and it was a short-lived movement in the mid 70s to early 80s that looked at the history and culture of decoration and craft to create pieces that embraced ornamentation and maximalism. And some artists I really enjoy are Robert Kushner and Joyce Kozloff, Miriam Shapiro and Gloria Klein. And I'm honestly just so in love with the work that came out of this movement. It allowed me to accept that I can let go of the controls and limits that I had on myself and go all over the top and create mishmashes of color and glitter that works together with my photos. Another inspiration of mine is Jody Mack, who is an experimental filmmaker and animator. Like the pattern and decoration movement, her work is in scraps, giving them in her work. Even her piece Glistening Thrills, that's just made from dollar store gift bags. So it's really accessible and it's all intentional, but it embraces fun and play, which is a quality that I really have to remind myself of when making work. Otherwise, the heavy personal material I'm working from starts to become a bit suffocating. I mean, it's all pretty simple, but having fun is such a big part of my art practice. So getting into my work, this is a self-portrait that I made in 2020. And it's when I really began to fall into a more mixed media art practice. This piece uses a combination of screen printing on mirrors, some experimental paperwork, and my photography and alt process prints. And I was beginning to think about how my mental health plays into my self-perception. And I wanted to address the confusing chaos in my head through physical creative means instead of pushing it to the side. And this is where a recurring motif in my work started to pop up. These swirly, wavy shapes have become a constant in my work in some form or another. And I was using it partially as a meditative process to sit down and make, but also to be a physical representation of the mental turmoil and struggle I was dealing with. And although I do keep a lot of the small details of this project to myself, I want it all to be intentionally vague. I want people to take away whatever they want from seeing my work and to create any sort of interpretation they want, even if it might be completely different than my original intention. And these are a few pieces of the larger installation. So as well as traditional darkroom prints, alt process pieces like chemograms and photograms are a big interest of me. The ability to embrace chance and unexpected outcomes through these processes is super appealing. It allows me to let go of the technical photo side of my brain and bring in experimentation, like I mentioned earlier. But last year I started making these mixed media paintings. So combining drawing with more of my photography, because for a little while, my relationship with photography was kind of strained. I was really questioning why I was making stuff and what I was doing if I wasn't enjoying it anymore. So these pieces served as an outlet to get out all the separate artistic urges I had that I rejected for a while because I thought it wasn't supposed to fit into what I should be making as a photo student. But after a while of sitting with these pieces and making a few more, I came to the realization that photography doesn't have to be limiting. I can cover my work in pink paint and glitter, and it could just be a part of my style, embracing kitsch and poppiness. So last summer I got a diagnosis that really changed how I view myself and how I view my life going. I don't really tell people the specifics because it can change how people view me, but when I got that diagnosis, I went into this almost grieving process. It changed how I got through everyday life. And because it was on my mind so much, I needed to work it out through my work. So I created this piece, A Bouquet to Give Myself, by using the myth and symbolism of flowers stemming from the Victorian language of flowers. I layered distorted risograph prints to convey the mostly difficult emotions I was dealing with. So marigolds are mourning and grief, amaranthus is hopelessness, and thistle is aggressiveness and pain, but also protection and getting over adversity. And I would like to continue this project in the future. It was kind of my way of using a discrete language to talk about my feelings, transforming like the ugly into something visually appealing. And it's no surprise, all of these prints were covered in like a thin layer of gold glitter. So it kind of creates this luminous quality when you walk around them. And then finally, this is my thesis work, In the Absence of Inner Self, or In the Absence of Inner Self, Outer Reality Slips Away. And basically this is me continuing my work with my diagnosis in combination with internal self-perception. When I got my diagnosis, it put me in this constant state of dissociation. Sometimes it gets worse, but now on a daily basis, I never really fully feel present. My memory is foggy and I don't really ever feel like a real person. And this is made worse by the fact that I've never had an internal image of myself. I don't really know who I am physically, and there's a sense of disconnect, which in pairing with my dissociation makes me feel like a blank person just kind of existing, which is terrifying sometimes. But I made this dummy body based off of my scale. It's my height. And I've used it to take self-portraits of myself in places that are important to me or bring me a sense of calm. And currently this is a series of 9 photos. As you see them now, they're unfinished because I'm decorating the frames, the mat boards, and the glass of each of the photos with things like paint and rhinestones and glitter. So it makes a full object that incorporates the photo print and the frame. And I mentioned before that kitsch is a big part of my work, and it's really seen in this when it will be all together. And the frame ornamentation represents one of the few controls I feel like I have over myself and my appearance. So like decoration through stuff like my makeup or style, it's really important to me. And it's kind of like a pretty Band-Aid on top of like a heavy, ugly wound. And it allows me also the satisfaction of working with my hands a bit more. So I'm adding like a personal handmade touch to each of my prints. And these are a few like really quick work in progress shots of a couple of the frames I'm working on to give you more of an example of what's sort of happening. And each frame is about 24 by 36 inches. So it is on the larger scale. And while that means a little bit of extra work, it gives the pieces more presence and honestly allows me to put more detail into each piece. And even though sometimes I struggle with the like personal scary aspect of what my photos are based on, the visual element of this project serves to embrace like my inner child, and that's a comforting support to me. So plans after graduation, I really want to focus on my mental and physical health because that's been put on the back burner for a while because of school. But I'd also really like to do some collaborative projects with friends. Some of my closest friends are animators and filmmakers, and I would really love to sit down and work on a project with them. And I'd also like to continue my thesis work by making maybe some more conceptual constructed scenes. So thank you guys for listening. I appreciate all of you guys being here and spending your time to be here. All my contact info is here, and my exhibition will be at the end of this month at the Hubble Street Galleries in San Francisco. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Jayna. That was really great.
Presentation.
Yeah, it was really great. I also love that you really personalized the presentation with a sneak peek of how the frames are gonna look like. And in general, just I am really enjoying how you're bringing all these disciplines together into your photography and really making that, really pushing the two-dimensionality into something else.
Yeah, thank you.
The first thing I was going to say to you is that your eyeliner is really fantastic. So, and then you brought it up in the in the presentation. First off, thank you for as much as that you were able to give us and feel healthy about, for sharing, because I know that can be incredibly difficult when your work is about something heavy. So that's much appreciated. And I'm really, I really want to know how do you know how much to share, and how are you also protecting yourself at the same time when making this work? If that feels like too much to ask, then you can. Yeah.
No, that's definitely something I've been thinking a lot about when, preparing for talking about my work in this presentation. I've brought up the specifics of my diagnosis in smaller groups. I don't know if I'm totally comfortable sharing it with everyone yet, because it does have this like unintentional like subconscious change in people. I might present it through the project statement for this piece, so it'll be in writing, but I'm not like verbally addressing it.
I think that you gave us just the right amount. I'm just saying, like, yeah. And then how are you going about when you're talking about something that is like a difficult thing to discuss through your work? Like, how are you going about like just checking in and making sure that you're good while you're working on it, and then when you have to talk about it?
Yeah, definitely giving myself the time to sit and breathe if something doesn't feel right. It's kind of been a struggle over the last 2 semesters trying to figure out like how much of myself I can give up through the work and how much to keep to myself. So to be completely honest, it's still like, I'm still trying to figure that out because a lot of this work is so new to me.
I'm gonna just encourage you, because I think it's really important when you make work about stuff that is very like internally heavy to continue to check in with yourself about that. I think that you found a really interesting and kind of playful way to talk about something that, as you expressed, is like difficult for you, and like found a way to do it in a way that feels good, and I like seeing that. I also am like, sorry, I wrote all these notes here and I'm trying to see. When you're showing the images of the mat boards, that you're and the like even the paint on the frames, it's so interesting to me that you're using like the mat board is like such an old school traditional way of exhibiting a photograph, and you've completely like sort of turned it on its head and made it into like something that, rather than creates this like precious jewel. This is what one of my first photo teachers was like, the mat board makes the print feels like a precious jewel, but instead of that, you're actually like creating a piece where the mat board is incredibly busy and maximalist and like almost its own piece in itself, where like maybe like detracts from the photograph but is like part of the piece with the photograph. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I first thought about framing was kind of struggling if I wanted to use the mat board or not, but then I realized it's like such a big piece of space that I could use it to my advantage. So for some of my mat boards, I'm planning on like covering them with glitter. So like I'll have like a hot pink glittery mat board on top of one of my photos. And I'm excited because not all the pieces are finished yet, but I'm excited to see how each of like the mat boards and the decoration on top of the glass is going to interact with the photos. Like, because my work is not minimalist at all. And if I can put like a bunch of stuff on there, like I'm going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that is actually like the mat board becomes a very integral part of the piece rather than being something that sort of holds it inside of the frame, and also even the paint on the frames there. The work that you're making with this object that you made to represent yourself, there's like such, like you were talking about bringing in other aspects of art making, like like screen printing and different kinds of painting, etc. And here it feels to me like a performance at the same time, where while you're not necessarily embodying this figure you've created, it's also like a documentation of a sculpture in different places. And even looking at these two images together, they sit so well together because the way the fabric of the blanket and then the sort of like the way that the rocks are on the beach there and the way that the light is hitting both of them, like it feels so similar, such a similar place. And the figure the figure like is almost, even though it's in like these bright spaces, is also like in shadow at the same time. I really enjoy looking at them. Trying to think of
Yeah, I guess I can respond to that though.
yeah,
Like
please.
the making of this figure was a big part of the process, even though it's not like presented in the photos. Like I spent like a couple days, like I had to trace my body and sew it, and there's a metal frame, and even the like process of like taking this around in public and having people see me walk around with this person-sized figure is definitely like, there's an element of like performance to it. I think in Marcel's class, we watched a video about Stephanie Sajuko, and she talked about like the act of like physically making something for her pieces is really important to her. And that like tactile element of like sitting down and spending time sewing something is a big part of her work, which really resonated with me because I was making this figure at the same time.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. It's also like almost representative too when we're talking about like when you're like that, the idea of like the heaviness of a idea or a thing that you're going through, and then actually having a heavy object that I mean, I don't know how much it weighs, but like having something to carry, like it's almost like the figure becomes like the burden and it's like externalized in a way. I mean, I don't know if that's where like how you're feeling about it, but it's interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, again, this work is pretty new to me. So every day I'm like thinking about new ways that I'm approaching this project. And I do want to spend more time with it because I feel like I personally can get a lot more out of the project and working with this figure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just like really encourage you to do exactly what you said after graduation and like really care for yourself mentally and physically. I think art school can be really hard. So can living through a pandemic, and so can you know, going through any sort of mental health issues. And so like hearing you say that you're planning on caring for yourself and that's going to be your number one thing, I really appreciate hearing that, and I encourage you to follow through with it for sure. Yeah, I don't know if your professors want to jump in. I know that
I'm going to chime in here. Also, Jayna, I can't believe we haven't had a chance to work together. I thought your presentation was excellent. I thought you spoke so clearly and articulately. Funny to mess up on that word when you're talking, but to just really thoughtfully talk about your work and your experience. You did a really great job. That's not easy to do. And I found myself really captivated by the way you were speaking. I think this work that we're looking at right now is really interesting too, because depending on if the light is hitting this figure or not, it almost looks like a removal, a complete void, like almost like it's a cutout in the image, which I think is a really interesting play when then we have a sense of it having some sort of dimension and versus not. So I think all together they do something really interesting as a group that I'm really intrigued by. And I also love the mat, the mat, and how it's funny that I think in photography obsess about the mat. I mean, it's kind of like you want to roll your eyes, but it has such a historical significance, and the medium is a way to like cover up, it's a way to reinforce the framing of the whole medium. And it's like, oh, if you have an error in the darkroom, we're going to cover that up. There's no outside of this frame. The world is what I've cut out of it. And I love this sort of reintroduction and insistence on all the messiness and all the other things that are going around as having equal weight to the image that you're working with. So bravo. I'm a little heartbroken that we didn't get to work together, but I thought that was great. Can't wait to see your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, I also wanted to say that I really appreciate the gesture that you made into everything that you were like thinking about and feeling, and really materialized it into, you know, this object or this self that you're carrying with you to the places that you care about. I find that to be really moving, and I really love seeing you, you know, throughout the creating of this process. But yeah, congratulations. That presentation was great.
Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate everyone being here to listen too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jayna. So last but not least, we have Keisha Kid. And I'm very excited to get to know your work because we haven't worked together this semester. So whenever you're ready, please feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Okay, hello everyone. Let me, wait, now it's doing something odd. Okay. Oh wait, not that. Okay, you can see, yeah? Everyone can see?
Yes.
Okay. Great. All right, so my name is Keisha Kidd. I am a photo major, and yeah, this is the beginning. So I am currently living in San Francisco, but I'm from Durham, North Carolina, and I am the daughter of a very creative woman who is also the daughter of a very creative woman, and for me, that's where this begins. As I recall, my grandmother was the first person that really exposed me to art. She herself liked to draw. She had just amazing art all around her home. And she had so much art that it would just, she would rotate between the seasons. So she had her spring art and summer art and her fall and winter art. And in this picture of her here, I'm not sure, I feel like she drew that, but I don't know, I have to confirm with my mom at a later date. But I was just always inspired by her. And here is a picture of me at her house in the 90s, and you can see this like wild wallpaper. So that's where a lot of my inspiration, I would later realize, came from. And at some point, in my early teens, my mom got a digital camera, and I just immediately decided to take hold of that, and that's where my self-portraits began. And they usually happen at a time where I was going through something, and as a child, anytime I was going through something, my mom would say, go create. You need to go make something, go create. And so I found myself taking self-portraits as a way to investigate or analyze myself, or just photograph myself in a way that I wanted to be seen. So this is one of those self-portraits here. I didn't have a tripod. I would just stack books on top of each other and just shoot that way. Oh wait. Okay, yes, so now we're moving on to my influences. And I would say Carrie Mae Weems' Kitchen Table series from 1990, the year I was born, is definitely a huge influence to me. I am very inspired by how sophisticated the work is within one space, and how she just used this one corner of her kitchen to create all of these scenes that were very intimate, that were profound, very meaningful, and I felt like was very much in alignment with the way that I was creating and with my self-portraits. Not going into a studio, not having some elaborate space to photograph in, just using what I had in the space that I was in. My next influence is Kesh, who is a multidisciplinary artist using photo, music. She's now an NFT artist, but she was one of the first artists that I really became drawn to back in the MySpace era. I had a deep, and still have a deep, appreciation for the way she combines analog and digital mediums to create this hybrid art. And to me, it's really important to me, because when I first came to art school in 2017, I felt like I had to choose. You're either a digital artist or an analog artist, a digital photographer or an analog photographer. And I never really liked the idea of having to choose. And so I've been consistently inspired by her work. And that combining of these two worlds, I think we live in a really cool time in terms of creating. What am I doing here? Okay, so I wanted to share this one quote by Kesh from an excerpt from an interview with ID Magazine in 2013 that I've always loved, and I circle back to this often. And the question was, do you think that the art world recognizes you? She responds, not yet, and considering the facts, why should they? I'm young, have no art education, come from no money, am an ethnic minority and a female. I tick none of the boxes, but this is a digital age. Boxes no longer need to be ticked. I'm not trying to kick down their door and take the mic. I'm speaking to the people in my own way. If invited to that world, I'll be happy to attend. If not, it won't stop me. And this resonates with me, and I just respect the mindset of not creating for accolades, but creating because you feel compelled to create, because you know that somebody is resonating with your art. So this is a self-portrait piece from 2018 titled On Loneliness. And over the years, what I've come to realize is my self-portraits are like timestamps for me. And I think looking back on my childhood and how whenever I was upset or feeling down, you know, my mother, go create, go do something. And at this point in time, looking back on it, I know exactly what I was feeling, why I was feeling, and this was taken in my apartment, so I also know where I was feeling. And it's really useful for me to have these timestamps where I can look back and see how far I've come. And this work, you know, it was interesting when I was putting this presentation together, I was thinking, oh, like what completed work do I have? And to be honest, all of my work feels like it's living. I don't feel like any of it in terms of these self-portraits is done because it's this ongoing study of myself. This is some newer work, but was taken in 2019, a part of a series that is growing called To Be Considered. And at this point, these photos were taken in Death Valley. And I went there out of a need to create. I was going through just a heartbreak and I needed to get out of my environment. And I initially wanted to go to the desert because I thought it was going to be this barren, dead landscape where I would pull from all my sadness. But I went and I saw just how vast and lush and beautiful it truly was. But I was thinking about all that I was offering as a woman, all that I was offering as a human, the deepest parts of myself to someone who I just didn't feel considered. I didn't feel thought of, appreciated, or honored. And this was a way to process that. And these images were initially digital, and I was printing them, and I just couldn't get that feeling that I felt, or that sense of completion, or just everything that I was feeling on that trip. I wanted it to come through in the photo and it wasn't happening digitally. So I turned the digital file into a film negative and then processed it and created a print in the darkroom. And these are very small and they feel so precious and so special to me. And the process, making the process a little bit longer made me think about the process of healing and coming out on the other side, you know, and getting something really beautiful. This is a part of this series To Be Considered. And really in this collection, it's just like a culmination of my thoughts, things I've been thinking about, things that I feel like need to be considered. And I've been thinking a lot about friendship from childhood into womanhood. And I am one of the remaining friends in my core group that does not have kids and is not married. And being in the position that I'm in, I've been able to really observe my friends as they transition from children to teenagers to women and stepping into the roles of wives and mother and seeing the identity issues that they face. And when you witness all of your friends go through these changes, a lot of the allure, a lot of the fantasy and fairy tale around marriage and kids kind of goes out the window. And so that's something that I'm grappling with, in knowing that I have finally, at 32, I've finally gotten to a place where I feel good within myself. I feel confident and good with my body. And then to know that at some point, my whole world is gonna get shaken up again. And thinking about, do I want that? Do I want to go through those challenges? Do I want to lose my identity and have to find it all over again? And that's a really weird place to be, because there's so much beauty in it, but it's also very complicated. And something I can honestly say right now, I'm not ready for it. And the image on the right was taken inside of my mother's home. And something I've been thinking about is I have all of these questions about love and relationships and womanhood. And I discuss these things with my mom often. And so often I want to be able to reach back even further and speak with my grandmother. My grandmother has passed away. And so in these images here, a lot of what is photographed were items that belong to relatives that have passed on. And thinking about how I'm able to hang on to their memory through items that, you know, have outlived them. And just really, I don't know, it's complicated, but, you know, I feel close when I look at this image and I can see items that were in my grandmother's home. You know, I can't talk to her, or, you know, I can't really talk to her, you know, but seeing this makes me feel closer, if that makes sense. So, let's see. Okay, so post-grad plans, and this is some work that I am in the process of developing right now. After graduation, I want to get weird. I want to keep experimenting with my work. I want to try new mediums. Like here, this is the first time that I've ventured into sculpture, and I'm really wanting to pull more from inspirations that I had when I was a kid, like seeing different artwork. These nails that I've created that have these jewels hanging down are directly inspired from a print that I saw in my grandmother's home my entire life. And when she passed away, the print was passed on to me. So I just want to continue to grow and make some work that is not so literal in terms of what I'm thinking about or what I'm asking. And I just want to have fun. But yeah, so I want to do more with sculpture, sound, and virtual reality as well. And I want to form new questions. I really want to live this artist life. So applying for grants and exhibitions and residency opportunities is something that I'm really looking forward to and wanting to focus on, because I don't at all, I'm not ever gonna be done creating. And I want to apply to grad school as well. You know, there's a part of me that's like, I'm not ready to not be a student anymore, because a lot of my ideas, I feel like I have just scratched the surface on. You know, coming to school a little bit later at 27, I feel like it took me about 2 years to really deconstruct my mind from corporate America and really be able to fully step into being an artist. So I feel like with a lot of my ideas, I've just scratched the surface and I still want to go deeper. And yeah, and then in addition to that, I just want to continue to work towards building the life I desire, which is a life where I can create, educate, learn, experiment, and laugh a lot. And
amazing.
That is, there's my contact, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much, Keisha. That was great. I like really love the quality of the work you're presenting, and also the way you're kind of articulating your own idea of self. And even just you describing, you know, taking a digital image and then the care of putting it back into the darkroom process. That actually got me really inspired. So thank you. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Full disclosure to everyone, I met Keisha when you first came to the Bay and we're at SFAI, and I'm just really excited for you that you're graduating. And like, I know this is something you've been working very hard towards for a really long time. Yeah. Let's see. First off, I loved it when you said that you put the camera on a stack of books. I feel like that is a very relevant tripod, and you use whatever that you have. There's something really incredible that's happening. Forgive me for like referring to everyone here, where everyone here is sort of like working outside of like tradition and like the way that you're creating your work, and like seeing, like Marcel said, like seeing the way that you made the decision to create something by hand that was something that you made digitally, and not sort of being like, okay, well, this is what I have, so I have to work in this specific way, or saying like, oh, I have to go back to the desert and make that. And like also being like, okay, this is going to be something that's small and that I have to like, that I'm going to be able to hold in my hand. It was really nice to see that. Sorry, I'm trying to go, I have all these notes, but they're kind of messy. When you're talking about, can you go back to your like first portrait that you spoke about?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm like not.
It's fine if you can't. Like I
remember felt like I had this
like.
whole share screen thing together. Okay, here we go.
Oh, you're great. When you talk about this image, like first of all, like you've created a studio, like you're turned your apartment or wherever, whatever home you're in, into a studio in a way that these images feel very cinematic. Is that something that you were attempting, like trying to, like, I know this isn't like it's staged in the way that it's a self-portrait, but yeah, I'm curious about like your approach to photographing, if that was like an intention.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with light and you know, that good light. But yeah, I've really been inspired by a lot of photographers who will even mix light, you know, mixing artificial and natural light to give it a more cinematic look. And that's something that it means a lot to me in my work. I have really liked the idea, and a lot of times I approach my work where I want it to look like a film still.
I feel like you really achieved that, and at the same time, like I was earlier talking to some other photographers, and one of them was talking about the photograph as a memory, and how, like you were talking about how you created these images and you remember everything about it. And there are times when we see a photograph of our childhood or a photograph of an experience that we had, and that photograph becomes the memory. And it's interesting that you staged these images, and then I'm curious if you feel like this photograph has become the memory, or the other parts of it are still in there as well.
Oh, I mean, I remember everything about it. Like I said, like down to why I was feeling and what I was feeling, how I was like, when I look at it, I can still kind of get that feeling in my heart and in my stomach of how I felt. And then I also, you know, remember what it felt like to set the shot up, you know, to set it up, to have the timer on and to run and jump on the couch real quick, you know, like start to give it away, you know what I mean? But,
it's fine.
Yeah, but I remember all of that. And I also remember the feeling of, is this silly? is this silly to document myself, to stage a shot when I'm so down and out emotionally? Is this vain? You know, it took me a while to really get comfortable with using myself as a subject of my work and to document these moments.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, I remember everything about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of that, like how the photograph sort of becomes that thing, like you were talking about it as a marker in time. I really like the way that you use the quote from the art. First off, like, also Carrie Mae Weems is like one of my favorite artists on the planet. Please go watch her speak if you haven't done so already. But then also like quoting the other artists where you're talking about like just sort of like being unrecognized, and that you're making the work. Well, the artist talking about herself being, or themselves being unrecognized, and you talking about making your work because you're driven to do that. And I hope that is why most artists make work, but I'm also very glad to hear that. And like, if this is part of your, it seems like it's almost part of your healing process. Will you go to the images of the two next to each other? Sorry. Okay, this one first and then the other. Wait, go back to the other one.
Okay.
I noticed that there was something you said about like feeling like the desert was going to be this like vast, dry, whatever. And the way you spoke about it really feels like maybe the desert gave something back to you in this time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, and I'm still processing exactly what it gave me, you know, because I'm like, because I feel like I want to go back. You know, I mean, I have to go back. I have to. And I had never been to the desert before. I woke up one day and I was like, I'm going to go to Death Valley. And I planned the trip in maybe a week. And I hit my friend up 2 days before I left. And I was like, can you come with me? I need to get some shots. And I feel like it's going to be very meaningful to me and I don't want to mess it up. Mm-hmm. So it was very cleansing. It was cleansing and it was refreshing to go there and to get something out of it that I wasn't expecting since I had never been. You know, I mean, I expected to come back feeling the same way that I did, depressed, sad, empty, but I came back feeling full.
That's really wonderful to hear. Okay, will you go to the next image?
Oh my goodness, I'm never gonna figure this thing out. Okay.
This is, you know what, the good thing about it is this is like probably one of your very last Zooms, at least for a little while. Well, yeah. Until, you know, like all of the people are asking you to come and talk about your work in their class or whatever.
Oh, I receive.
So again, with like the mixed lighting here, like using that light over the stove is just really fantastic. And how it, like your face is lit there, but it's not like the most lit part of the image, but it like really comes clear. And then like looking at it here, I'm sure if I was looking at the actual image, I would be able to know what was going on there. But I love seeing all of the little details in the space. And you're talking about like people transitioning into a more domestic life, but you're also showing like all of the things under the sink that like you're taking away what is, and I don't know if you did that on purpose or this is just the way your kitchen is, but it feels like it's very orderly, and at the same time, like we can see the plumbing under the sink and we can see the cleaning products and we can see like the sort of apparatus that comes up behind like what you're what's happening there. And then the image on the right, when you're talking about all of the objects and we can see the door open behind you and the mirror there, I feel like that's a very important part of the image, but it feels almost like the image is almost like an altar to your ancestors, to your people there. I don't think there was actually a question in there. Yeah, but I'm curious, you're talking about like removing the fairy tale from like the idea of like married life or the idea of having children, but what about the idea, like what about the artist part of it?
Can you elaborate on that part?
Like, do you feel like you have a fairy tale of like life as an artist, or like, do you feel like there's like, I don't know, or do you feel like it's like, it's like a realist view? I don't know if that's a fair question to ask someone who's about to graduate from art school. So
Yeah, no, it's fair to ask. I will say honestly, the experience that I have had the past 4 years between moving from North Carolina and leaving the security of everything that I had back there and coming to this place that I always wanted to live, it has felt very much like a fairy tale to me the past 4 years at least. Now, in terms of, you know, after school and living life as an artist, which I do want to do, I don't at all think that it's easy. I think it's just as much of a grind, if not more. Well, I don't want to say grind because that, you know, that's like whittling down into dust, into nothing. So I won't say that, but it is challenging. You know, it doesn't come to you. You have to be on your shit. But I feel like I don't at all believe in the starving artist narrative anymore. That's not what I speak for myself. That's not what I speak for others. I think that we do live in a time where you can be an artist. That can be what you do. And that is the belief that I have and that I'm hanging on to for dear life, you know, and something that I feel like I've shown myself over the past 4 years is that it's going to take a lot of hard work, but it can happen.
Yeah, let's give snaps to well-fed artists, and yeah. I think we're all holding on to that dream dearly as well. With your newer work, I wanted to like suggest looking at Mildred Howard's hands, like switching in the kitchen. I don't know if you've seen those sculptural pieces before. And also Kathy Liu's new work at the, I think she has some hands at the Chinese Cultural Center as well.
What was that?
Just look on her website. I'm sorry?
I got Mildred's, but who was the second person?
Kathy Liu, it's Cathylu. Sorry, I'm gonna stop talking and let your professors jump in because I think I brought you like way over time. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Keisha. That was really beautiful to learn about your work, and also, yeah, also a good note to end on, thinking about the fact that we're all here, we're all artists doing the best thing that we know how to do, and we have to keep doing it. So let's do a round of applause for everyone who presented today.
I'll jump into Keisha. That was awesome. So nice to learn about your work, and what I think that Marcel is exactly right. That was a beautiful note to end on. And I just feel so inspired by everyone's talk today. I also really appreciate and think about responding to your work in the way that sitting for the camera is an occasion, you know, like the way that you talked about your mother and your grandmother, and then even your first, that self-portrait on the stack of books. It's an occasion, you know, like you thought about what you put on, you're wearing this dress and all these different sort of performances, you know, that being seen by the camera is still, you know, it's an occasion. I thought about that in Leah's work today. I thought about that in Jayna's work. It was really interesting, and Tiago's and Astrid's. And it was just a wonderful afternoon. I feel so inspired. And I want to also thank Keisha for being here with us. That was awesome. Thanks for all your insight and just words of support and encouragement. Marcel, likewise. Thank you everyone so much for being here. And we've got another one coming up. When's the next one? Anybody know that date off the top of their head? Ingrid, are you there? Are you reading my mind? Do you remember the date?
Yeah, I was just looking it up myself.
Oh, wonderful.
I think it is, I want to say March 30th, but
March 30th, yes.
yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great, another round. And please, we'd love to see everyone again. And if you're on the Oakland campus, or I know Astrid, your show is going to be in San Francisco, but please come through. The galleries are open to the public. So again, congrats everyone. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Can I just say quickly, thank you so much for like sharing your work with me and allowing me to be here. I feel really lucky to have seen it. And I hope that my last question didn't sound discouraging. You're all incredible, and being an artist is like the best job in the world. you get to talk to the best people in the world.
Yes, thank you everyone. Hope to see you around, and I can't wait to see the exhibitions in person.
Congrats, everybody. Take care.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Enjoy spring break.